who I believe that fits the purpose for this panel discussion as our moderator. There is a wind of change that is blowing in Ghana with the election of our new and first female vice president of the Republic of Ghana. And you'd also be aware that the University of Ghana, Legon, has as its chancellor a woman. And the vice chancellor is also a woman. The registrar is a woman. And IDEG has long been following the tradition and vision. And so I have the singular honor and privilege to introduce to you our moderator, who is also a woman. I would like to, if you would allow me, to read a brief profile of hers, for starters, and then she will take up the rest of the program. She is a renowned academic and researcher in the field of communication studies. She's currently the director for the Center of International Relations and former head of the Department of Communication Studies at the University of Media Arts and Communication Institute of Journalism, that's UNIMAC, IJ. She is a founding member and managing director of Synergy Strategica. She is also a lecturer with over 12 years of experience in media and communication studies and is widely recognized for her excellent performance and contributions to success in the communication training industry. Her history of improving course strength and modernizing instruction with a fresh and forward-thinking approach to education and her the position of head of department communication studies at Ghana's lead communication university, the Ghana Institute of Journalism. Prior to becoming a lecturer in 2009, she was a corporate communications manager at the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority. She later obtained a PhD in media and communication in 2017 from the University of Leicester, and she is focused researcher who is dedicated to innovative, dynamic, and organized work. She has extensive knowledge of celebrity politics, political communication, political marketing, celebrity, gender, and cultural studies research. She has published several publicly available research papers in the areas of celebrity, politics, and gender. And she has been nominated to serve on the GIJ Council. She's been the president of the GIJ chapter of the University Teachers Association of Ghana, Utah, since 2019. She was also appointed the president of the Leicester Ghana Alumni Chapter in 2021. In 2020, she was nominated as an Alumni of the Year Awards finalist of the University of Leicester. I also know that she's a board member of the Graphic Communications Group. Gentlemen, please, with a resounding round of applause, help me welcome our moderator, who is also my lecturer at the Master's Development Communication class. And I'm proud to welcome Dr. Laurentia Ejapon.
Thank you very much. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all very much for coming for this very important discussion this morning. A discussion that we started last year at the same time in this very room. And we are going to continue this very important discussion that is supposed to lead towards encouraging more of our citizens to participate in local governance. The policy framework for the current local governance system in Ghana is based on the 1992 Constitution and the Local Governance Act, Act 936 of 2016. Under the current system, political parties are allowed to contest national elections, but are prohibited from participating in local level elections as stipulated in Article 553 of the Constitution, and I quote, "Subject to the provision of this article, a political party is free to participate in shaping the political will of the people, to disseminate information on political ideas, social and economic programs of a national character, and sponsor candidates for elections to any public office other than to district assemblies or local or lower local government units," end of quote. Consequently, the position of the chief executive, or the MMDCs as we know of, at the local levels are appointed by the president. The current arrangement gives the central government a vast range of powers over local governments, rendering them weak, unable to take initiative, and making it very exclusionary. This dysfunctional arrangement impedes the performance of the various MMDAs, and this is because while in principles, these MMDAs are supposed to be independent, are supposed to be an independent arm of the executive government. Under the current constitutional provision, they operate as functionaries of a national president elected along political party lines, who then appoints these MMDCs based on their party affiliations. Thus, MMDCs are unable to perform as independent agents within the structure of executive power. Moreover, this dysfunctional arrangement undermines the democratic basis of decentralization by reversing the normal direction of accountability. It enforces upward accountability of MMDCs towards the central government rather than downward accountability towards citizens at the local level. Recent controversies surrounding confirmation of nominees by the former president for MMDC positions in 2021 involved assembly members openly and boldly declaring their party affiliations. For instance, in the Cape Coast Metropolitan Assembly, some assembly members who organized a press conference, to announce their decision to return money gifts they had received from the MCE nominee, admitting that they associated with the NDC. Similarly, after the last district level elections, NPP members were seen jubilating that their members won most of the districts. The fact therefore still remains that although political parties are prohibited at the local level, they have infiltrated the local government system, not because they want to break the law, but out of the desire to participate in the most consequential level of governance in the country. One reason that is commonly cited for excluding political parties from district assembly elections is the need to prevent the reoccurrence of negative practices, such as vote buying and monetization at the local level. But the banning of political parties at the local level has not resolved this problem. In 2021, the endorsement processes of MMDCs was marred by open confessions of giving and taking of bribes, as stated earlier. In Jabin, for example, a DCE nominee was caught on tape openly demanding a refund of his monies, allegedly paid to bribe assembly members to vote for him after the Assembly had rejected his nomination. There are several evidence that shows that the existing local government setup has failed to ensure equitable, inclusive, and participatory governance in the local system. In a 2021 CDD Ghana survey, an overwhelming 75% of respondents admitted that their local assemblies have performed badly in ensuring transparency and openness at the assembly level, and in responding to development challenges and soliciting inputs from community members into annual district development plan. There is widespread and growing dissatisfaction with service delivery such as water, electricity, shelter, healthcare, education, and jobs at the local level. And this explains why many citizens have and continue to call for transformational reforms in our local government system. Most of the advocacy has been to amend Article 553 to allow for multi-party democracy at the local level, and 2431 to elect MMDCs. This will lead to a total overhaul of the local government system and eventually enhance it. Unfortunately, there are divided views on the matter. That is why this discussion is very important. The discussion will seek to look at the realities of the current system and provide some answers to critical questions that can improve our current local government system. And most importantly, propose a feasible recommendation that will lead to a functional local government system that enhances accountability to citizens, promotes citizens' participation, inclusion, and ensure a transformational development that we as a people seek. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome our panel members who will help us to critically dissect this issue. So first, and in no particular order, I want to invite Professor Attaining. Professor Ayi is a former professor at the Department of Political Science and currently sees himself as an independent scholar. He has, to his credit, over 210 publications in several areas of public policy and administration, politics, governance, and leadership. And he has consulted widely for several local and international organizations. He is a fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences since 2005. So ladies and gentlemen, you all know that he will make very important inputs in this discussion. My next panelist is Dr. Mame Jando. Yeah. Dechi Jando, yes. Doc is a senior lecturer and the immediate past head of the Department of Political Science. And her area of specialization is in comparative politics, politics of the developing world, democratization, democracy and elections in Africa, gender and politics. Her current research covers civil society and its relationship with government and states, civil society and its role in elections, elections and democracy in Ghana, civil society and political extremism in Ghana, ethnicity and democracy in Africa, and the role of the international community in Ghana's democratization. Ladies and gentlemen, our second panelist, who I'm sure has the credentials to actually make a contribution to this discussion. Our third panelist is Professor Kofi Kwashigan. Prof is a renowned Ghanaian academic and a legal expert. He's a professor at the University of Ghana's Law School and has served as the dean of the school from 2008 to 2019. Prof's teaching and research interest is in constitutional law, among others. And he is also a member of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, with this panel, I know that we are going to have a very interesting discussion. We will invite members of the public to also ask questions after the discussion. So I hope we are all going to be attentive and ready to partake in this deliberation. Thank you very much. Oh, yes. Thank you. Our final panelist, and please, sorry for that, is Dr. Akwete, who is the Executive Director of IDEC. I think everybody knows Dr. Akwete. He doesn't need any introduction. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so as I have previously in my opening remarks said, the discussion is going to be about our local assembly system as we have it now, what has worked for us and what hasn't worked for us. And our panel members are going to help us to critically dissect this issue that we have. So my first question, which I think the best person that I think can open this up for us is Professor Atuayu, because I think this will be a very good opener. So, in your estimation, to what extent does the current local government system promote accountability, citizen participation, and engagement, and give us effective public service delivery?
Okay, thanks a lot. Moderator, Happy New Year to all of you. I will not completely write off the current local government system that we have. What I need to say is that it needs fine-tuning. And fine-tuning means we need transformative reform rather than administrative reform. If you look at the current system, we are saying that the parties should not be involved. But we all know that the political parties are involved, even though they have been banned. So that's number one. Number two, the issue of accountability. If you look at the current system, the metropolitan, municipal, and district chief executives, MMDCs, are appointed by the president. So they are first nominated by the president, assembly will vote on them, and then the president will appoint. Now, what has happened is that the MMDCs rather feel that they are more accountable to the president than to the electorate, because the electorate do not nominate or do not vote for them. And so as a result, some of the MMDCs have been disrespectful of Nananum and others. They have run riot. There is impunity by some of the MMDCs. So in terms of accountability, we have not there yet. If you look at transparency, the assembly is supposed to, at every meeting, they have to display minutes of meeting, they have to display their trial balance, what have you, quarterly. These things are not being done. And actually, there should be a hearing of their plans, but these things do not actually go on. So in terms of accountability and transparency, the assemblies have not done well. And finally, which is very important, is that why are the assemblies there? They are there for development. Even the basic issue of promoting sanitation, or most of the assemblies have not been able to promote, sanitation to the point that our areas are not looking good at all. So the assemblies have not been able to perform well. And that is why most of the electorates have distanced themselves away from the assemblies. How do we bring the electorate back? And this is what we are here to do.
Thank you very much. Following from what Professor Atuayo is saying, we've realized that in the 2024 manifestos of the two main political parties, the NDC and the NPP, they all talked about local government reforms. In fact, the NPP is talking about allowing political parties. In fact, they are not very clear. They go both ways. The NDC has been very clear in their manifesto that they support the elections of MMDCs, but on a non-political party level. So I will come to Dr. Akwete. So this question is to you. So looking at the proposal, especially for the current government within their manifesto, where they are advocating for reforms, but they are looking at the election of MMDCs, not on a political party level. Do you think that the election of MMDCs on a non-party basis can solve the challenges that are currently confronting the local government system?
Okay, thank you very much. I think many of you were here last year when the president now, as presidential candidate, spoke to you. And he said the party was for electing MMDCs without political parties. Now, he's been elected, and I think this is an important, he's now the president of Ghana, and that makes it imminent that the reforms that they had in mind could take place. It is also in their manifesto that the election of MMDCs is a priority for them, but they've listed, largely speaking, administrative and technological issues that will make it efficient to run the local government system under elected MMDCs. For our part as IDEG, we have always raised questions about the ideal, what they want to do, and the reality. The reality is that MMDC election is a political thing. It's not just an appointment. And we know that for the past government, if you recall the second term, we saw how MPP forward as MMDCs to be endorsed or appointed by the president. Elections actually take place within the party. They published it in the newspapers and so on and so forth, how people were selected, the candidates, their competence, their loyalty. And one of the interesting things in the publications, and I hope many of you will recall that because it was in the newspapers, was that it had to do with how they contributed to winning the 2020 elections. The mobilization, the campaign, and so on, was one of the major qualities considered. And therefore, if we have this kind of system, the question then we raise is that if indeed in MMDC appointments, the party does some elections within the party to identify candidates, could we really have an MMDC elections without parties participating? Maybe he meant it formally, opening it to opposition parties and all that. But there again, we have tried the MMDCE system for 32 years under the 1992 Constitution, but it's probably 36 years if we look at it from 1988. And it's long enough a time for us to assess how these appointments without parties, one party, is actually a one-party appointment because the governing party appoints. Are we retaining that? Is that what they meant, that we'll retain it? Because the party has been involved. What I think we could anticipate and we should have looked out for is that if in 32 years, one party appointed MMDCs have not delivered well or met the expectations, what difference would it make if the same system is modified, except that now they are making it formal, that it is direct elections? We could compete. So we could have independent candidates and we could have the governing party's candidates. And we think that it's only going to complicate the misperformance or the poor performance we have. Because what we need to make local government stronger and effective and very oriented towards serving the needs of the people is to have MMDCEs who would compete just like any election we've had. It will not just be party restricted, the president's party restricted, but open it to other parties to contest. If you would do it for individuals, so-called independent candidates, then we think the experience we have also speaks to open it up for different parties to also contest. In that case, we are assured that we may harvest a number of competent citizens who are coming in with their competence from different political backgrounds, so it will be an inclusive system. But they would also be able to demonstrate that we can hold them accountable. It is all the parties are in, and it's going to trigger how we reform our civil service, local government service, and other institutions so that they can work with these elected people and serve them well and deliver services which we are not receiving now. So this is how I would summarize that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, that is a very good and interesting take on it. So I will come to Dr. Jachidan. I was just thinking that following from what Dr. Akwete is saying, what has been some of the reasons for the resistance for political parties taking part in local government system? We all know that, as he mentioned, it's happening overtly or covertly in a way. So why is it being resisted at the MMDCE level?
Hello. Okay, thank you very much, Madam Moderator. It's afternoon already. Good afternoon to all of you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Nananum are also here as well. So I think, this goes back to, in a sense, 1988. We had the PNDC at that time put into place the district level elections on a no-party basis as part of their grassroots democracy agenda. And since then, I think the justification for that was to enhance actually some kind of peaceful interaction and no party conflict, some of the competition and conflict that is supposed to take place. And so over the years, you've had those who have maintained this idea of a no party, democracy at the local level, have maintained that they want to get away from the acrimony and the competition and the high financing and so on of the elections at the national level. And the political parties, I think, are important. So they, in a sense, they have been demonized in a way. There's been this idea that political parties are not good, but are not good at the local level, but they have worked, at the national level. 33 years now since the 1992 Constitution was promulgated and put in effect. Having political parties at the national level, yes, there are problems, but I think it characterizes the very nature of democracy. And political parties, I would argue, are the engine, the engine of a democracy, because they aggregate our interests, the interests of the citizens. They help mobilize, citizens of different persuasions, and they help in organizing and then facilitating competition and participation of the citizenry. And so we have that at the national level. At the local level, it would be important to have that as well. I think that if we take it from the, how should I say it, the experience of the national level, we have done quite well. I would argue that we should give it a try, having political party competition at the local level as well. It will actually enhance our democracy and sustain our democracy and make it a true democracy rather than this hybrid system that we have. So I know you didn't ask me that, but I just wanted to add on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is very interesting because we see that political parties are the bedrock of the national elections. So sometimes it gets a little bit surprising that some people are quite resistant from having almost the same system at the local level. Because if it's working at the national level, it's a vehicle that we use to elect our members of parliament, is the vehicle that we use to elect our president. Sometimes I wonder why we are so resistant in using this system that works at the national level, at the local level. But we can see that there are quite a number of countries around the world who have effectively operated a local government system that has political parties at the root of elections at those local government system. And we can talk about countries like Kenya, South Africa, United Kingdom, United States, and Denmark, where political parties have been involved in the local government system in those countries. So I think that my next question, which will go to Professor Kwashiga, is talking about what kind of lessons can we in Ghana learn from these countries that have employed political parties at the local government level.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, and season's greetings to everyone here. We have lessons to learn from other jurisdictions, no doubt. But before we go to the lessons, let me seek your permission to make this point, which is that it would appear that we are all agreed that there must be some reforms. Whichever way we call it or not, there must be some reforms. However, in crafting the reforms, we have to take into account the values and principles inherent in the Constitution. The Constitution is a composite document, and you have to operate it or interpret it holistically. If you want to amend a provision therein, you have to make sure that you take into account other aspects of it, other values, principles inherent in it. And you have to always ask yourself the question, the proposed reform I'm suggesting, does it help to improve or enhance the principles and values inherent in the Constitution? So the question you have to ask yourself anytime you propose a reform, an amendment of the Constitution, particularly the decentralization system is to ask yourself, is my proposal in sync with the principles in this constitution or the values in the constitution? Now, we have been told about lack of accountability, probity, lack of participation by the citizenry as far as the local governance system is concerned. So the reforms we are thinking of, you are thinking of, I'm thinking of, how do they address these problems? And to do that, we have to use the Constitution as a guide. What are those guides? If you look at the preamble of the Constitution, it talks about probity and accountability. Of course, from the discussion so far, it would appear that the system we have now, as operated now, does not seem to support this principle, fundamental to the Constitution, values fundamental to the Constitution. So the one you are going to propose must address this issue of accountability. And also, the other principle that all powers of government spring from the sovereign will of the people. It would appear from the discussions that as it is operated now, that principle of the people having a very important role to play in the local governance system is not realized. So the one you are going to suggest, does it support this principle? We have others. Madam Moderator, if your permission, if you look at the directive principles of state policy, other principles also. One very important, relevant one is in Article 35, Clause 6D. It says, the state should take every step to ensure that to make democracy a reality, with your permission I read, to make democracy a reality by decentralizing the administrative and financial machinery of government to the regions and districts, and by affording all possible opportunities to the people to participate in decision-making at every level in national life and in government. So the proposal you are going to make, how sure are you that it is in conformance with this provision? Then, if we look also at Article 240, which is under the Chapter 20, that decentralization and local government, 240 Clause 2E goes or expects that Parliament should put in place a system, a local government system, through legislation, to ensure the accountability of local government authorities. People in particular local government areas shall, as far as practicable, be afforded the opportunity to participate effectively in their governance. With all these principles inherent in the Constitution, the proposals that we'll be coming up with now, we have to ask ourselves, how very conformance are they to these principles? So because you want to amend or reform, doesn't mean you just bring up a suggestion that may seem to satisfy perhaps your party interest or some parochial interest. Now, Madam, I think I still have a little time to go to the question you asked.
I like the preamble.
Now, yes, Ghana, we are unique. So we should try to have systems that satisfy our peculiarities. I think that was why, as Doc said, that was why we had, during the PNDC period, because of the political exigencies of the time, we had a system designed to keep out the political parties at that time. And we incorporated it in the current constitution. We've practiced it for so long. The question is, do we still retain it? My favorite example is Nigeria. Nigeria, which has, excuse my my description, a more volatile political environment than us. But the local government system is run on party basis. And it's working for them. So why should we be so afraid of trying it at our local level? Well, the fear that it may lead to divisiveness, it may expand or multiply the problems we have at the national level, at the local level, that may be true, but that doesn't mean that we cannot find ways of addressing those concerns. So I will just leave it here, that other jurisdictions with perhaps not as peaceful an environment as we have still use the political parties at the local levels. And so far, nothing untoward is happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kwashiga. I think the preamble actually sets the stage for the question that I want to ask next. And this one, I think I will let Dr. Akwete and Professor Atuayu actually respond to it. And it has something that Professor Kwashiga mentioned, that there are countries that this system is working effectively for them. Some of them, not even as peaceful as we have it here in our country. It presupposes, especially when you look at the local government system that is operating in the United Kingdom, there are certain conditions that have made it, has set the stage for them to be able to practice local government elections based on party lines. And it's been very effective. So in this case, if we are talking about Ghana, what do you think are some of the preconditions that are necessary for us to successfully implement elections at the local government level, especially if we are looking at those kind of elections under party, political party lines?
Okay, so one, I would say that the 1992 Constitution was designed at the time political parties were not in existence. So that's the basic thing. So it was designed at the time they were not in existence. So now they have been in existence. And with the way the political parties had behaved, we have demonized political parties. So to the extent that, people say we don't need them at the local level where we need consensus, unity of purpose, local development, etc., etc. So so one of the conditions that we need to deal with is that there must be a self-introspection by the political parties themselves. The way they organize themselves, the way they look at development, the way they comport themselves, and the way they look at governance, and finally, the way they finance themselves. But whether we like it or not, even now, we'll still have monetization in a non-party-based local government system. Because as we have said, or as has been said, we have some MMDCs bribing assembly members, right? We've got that, so it doesn't. But then I think that one of the ways by which we can allow or maybe give that incentive for the political parties to work at the local level is that they themselves must undergo drastic reform. They must look at what is wrong with us that people are not prepared to let us into the local government system. So that's one. The second issue that we also need to look at is the fact that we as a country, we need to move away from that, I would call it morbid fear of political parties. At the national level, political parties have actually been doing well. And part of the development that we have seen in the 32 years of of the Fourth Republic is due to political parties. So why is it that we are afraid that we do not want to have political parties at the local level? Indeed, it has been proven elsewhere that local government system is the training ground for future national leaders. So people must learn how to debate at the local level. They must know how to tolerate opposition and all that. So all those things, people must be schooled at the local level before they come to the national level. And if you look at some of the leaders in the UK, in the US, they started as people who work with the local government system. The final one, which I need to stress, one of the final ingredient or the final factor is the whole issue of we as a country trying to deal with money matters. Money is important. Money is important, but how can we, because there is monetization everywhere, in the church, in the school, everywhere. We have to develop a culture on how to deal with monetization. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Akwete.
Thank you very much. I think I'd like to build on what Prof has said. First of all, if you've tested a system for 32 years under the current constitution, Fourth Republic, if you want to move forward or change your mind, you have to assess what the impact has been. And I think the impact we must assess is, has the exclusion of political parties from participating in local government achieved the goals, the purposes for which that prescription was put in place? And I think roundly we would say, well, people will be divided over this, but the truth of the matter is that it hasn't brought about the cohesion, because they saw parties then as very divisive rather than as nation builders. Now, are we so united now? We have to ask ourselves, without parties. And if we cannot say yes, then we have to ask ourselves, what is positive about parties getting involved in politics, especially in the executive arm of government? We are told that the exclusion of the parties was also driven by the idea that without parties, we will be more inclusive. So they devised a system that said, at the local assembly level, women, youth, a whole category of other people would have representatives in the assembly, use people with disability, and so marginalized group. So the inclusive system was going to be built on excluding parties, but identify specific groups and giving them representation. After 32 years, the women say they have been marginalized. Marginalization means exclusion. Then the chiefs also say, hey, you said we will get 1/3 representation. We haven't gotten them. And they are also complaining. And then you can continue with that and see that actually the system that excluded parties has not worked for us, more or less seen as it has failed. So what do we do then if parties are to come in? And in this case, the MMDCE case, I think when we alternate power between NDC and MPP, we should accept that MPP is an MMDC, if they are governing, so is NDC. But they don't allow opposition parties to come in. So we ought to create the basis then to say that democracy tolerates opposition, but it also requires competence. If you're going to be in local government, you must know how to run a system. If we've excluded them for 32 years and more, then it is important that we create conditions that would equip them effectively for them to enter and deliver what they are delivering. At the moment, we've seen that it's a one-party system. MMDC is appointed from the governing party. We've just seen MPP. NDC is going to do so. So it's not true that parties are not involved at all. Rather, opposition parties have been excluded. Certain groups have been excluded. So how do we get them to get into the process? And how effective would they work without us having some professional bodies to neutralize their party identity, but work with them to deliver the goods, public goods that citizens want? So I think it must start with the idea that we first amend the article prohibiting them, 55(3). But if we do that, we've used the term democratization, meaning that the executive arm of government is not a multi-party system, it's a one-party control system. If we want multi-party system, we amend the constitution, and we have that. So 55(3) ought to be amended. But it wouldn't mean that tomorrow we amend it, the next day the parties have failed, the executive arm of government. It is also going to impact the institutions. Our civil service, our public services have learned to serve one party in disguise at the MMDC level. So how equipped are they now to serve different parties if we are allowed in? So we have to build our civil service and public service, maybe make them more neutral, professional, and capable of serving different parties, including independent candidates. The third thing is that wherever there are parties, we should also acknowledge there will be independent candidates. And their rights are recognized in all democracies. So a more inclusive system is going to emerge. And that is something that will require groundwork, institutional reforms, capacity building, and so on and so forth. That should take place before we open the system up. So it would not be we went to a referendum and said yes, and the next day you're seeing different parties in the system. The civil service has to be rebuilt. We should need money. The government has to sponsor the parties to build their capacities. When you're excluded for 30 years or more, you lose capacity. And we have to build it. So the operational factors ought to be taken in account. We can do it quickly. And lastly, I think this is an important point I've always wanted to make, that if 32 years didn't give us the unity we needed, including the assembly system, which has also its own divisions, now we know that the parties are involved. MPP and NDC are in the assemblies. I hope some of you are here to confirm that, the assembly members. So let's create the system in the executive arm. What institutions? We are proposing that let us form a multi-party democracy commission and constitutional reform commission, a multi-party democracy and constitutional reform, and let them now take on the task of assessing what worked, what didn't work under the current system, what changes have occurred, how do we streamline them, and how do we create conditions for political parties and independent candidates to work together at the executive level and the assembly level. So it will be work. Some work has to be done before it will be effective. We can't assume that once they get in, everything is going to work. We need to create the conditions that would enable them work, including even public financing of they building their capacities to serve as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. If I may just add one point. We are gradually killing the smaller political parties by not allowing elections at the district levels. We used to have one or two from the smaller parties in parliament, but now it seems they don't just have a chance. So what about the opportunity for them at the local level? That could be a booster for them and also a training ground, as Doc said. So I think we have to take a look at that carefully. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that is also a very good point. Yes, Dr.
Can I add on?
Yes, please do.
Okay. I just want to, associate myself with what the profs have said, that particularly for the smaller parties, that's a very big one for me. The smaller political parties, are performing abysmally at the national level. And I think that if the opportunity is given to them at the local level, it will actually strengthen them. They will have structures there. They will get more serious and work all round the year. And then they will build capacity. And then, as Prof. Ayi said also, the training ground. So I think if we want to really improve upon our democracy and actually consolidate it properly, the smaller, opening it up to the parties is very, very important. So some parties will not make it to the national level, but they will, get some seats in the assembly. Some will become, some of their members will become DCs and so on. And that will really be the proper functioning of a democracy: inclusiveness, competition, and then accountability. And I think that will make the two major parties also sit up a bit. When the other smaller parties are, getting some seats at the local level. So it's a very important point. And then I can dovetail also to talk about even gender. So Dr. Akwete mentioned that, the exclusiveness of political parties meant that they wanted to, bring in women and the youth and people with disability and so on. But if we open up these elections to all parties, everybody is eligible to run. So you have candidates from everywhere, and I believe that that will take away the problem that even governing governments have now of trying to select who will, become MMDCs and so on. That pool of candidates, that will free governments from that, national governments from that, national presidents from that, and allow the system, the competition, the political process to take place. People will compete, women will compete, people with disability will compete, anybody will compete. Of course, you need money, so you have to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, there are two main things that I've taken from this discussion on the preconditions. So one talks about the smaller parties, which I am very passionate about. The fact that our constitution says we are operating a multi-party democracy and not a two-party democracy. But I think because at the national level it's become almost a two-party. Countries like Germany and Denmark, you realize that when you go to the local assemblies, that is where you see the smaller parties have the most impact. So I think that if we really want to practice a multi-party democracy, then the way to go is to actually include political party participation at the local assembly level, at the local governance level, so that we will see the smaller parties try it out, which can eventually bring them to the national level. It happened in Germany, right, where one of the smaller parties, I think the Christian Coalition Party, they started as a very small party, taking part in just local government elections, and then they eventually took over the national government. So it can happen. And if we want to really ensure that our democracy survive and we operate a multi-party system, then that is one of the ways to go. The second takeaway is what Dr. Akwete said about the public service or civil service. I think from what he is saying, it is one of the important preconditions if we want to ensure that we have a successful and a functional local government system. So my question then, and this one I would give it to my two professors. How do we go about ensuring that we look at a functional civil or public service in such a way that it can serve our local government in such a way that if political parties take part in local government elections, it will not destabilize the system as people fear?
Okay, thanks a lot. Right now we have the local government service, which is separate from the civil service. And the local government service has a head appointed, by the president, and you have the so-called decentralized departments, so health, education, roads, highways, what have you. So you have already a local government service which is supposed to, support the MMDAs. But at the same time, some of these institutions, so if you take education and health, they have not been hived off from the civil service. So, some of them are reporting to the assembly, others are reporting to their head office in Accra. So the problem is that we need to see how best to strengthen the local government, service, and it must be different from the civil service. If you are talking about the civil service, you are talking about the ministries. If you are talking about the local government, service, you are talking about decentralized departments of the ministries. And I think this overlap has not been done well, to the extent that education is still reporting to Accra, health is still reporting to Accra. So we need to see how can we make sure that we make the local government, service stronger. Honestly, I will tell you that most of the civil servants, they want to work with the civil service, where they will become chief directors. If you are working with the local government service, you become maybe a regional coordinating director, which is perhaps the equivalent. But they don't see it that way, the equivalent of the chief director. So you only end at the region. But if you are the chief director of the Ministry of Local Government, you are supposed to cover the whole country. But if you are the regional coordinating director of the Greater Accra region, you are only restricted to Greater Accra. So I think that we need to, find a way of realigning these positions. If you are regional coordinating director, is it the same as the chief director of a ministry, etc.? So this has not happened. The realignment between the civil service and the local government, service has not happened. The last point is the recruitment to these two services. If you look at the local government service, it is seen as being, politicized, job for the boys. So people are recruited at the local level, party apparatchiks being recruited to fill in positions, while the civil service, the emphasis is on meritocracy. So again, we need to find out how do we bring the merit principle within the local government service and then see its realignment with the civil service. These are the points.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, if I may, to add a little to that, there is need to strengthen the civil service also, to be independent, to be able to stand up to the political appointees. There is this example, Doc, you may correct me. There is this example, I think it's with respect to UK also, where the civil servant at the head of an organization in the UK could be dragged before the appropriate parliamentary committee to answer questions as to why he or she allowed the political appointee to do certain things. Because if I'm appointed as a political head, and I took a decision which you, as a professional civil servant, which you should know it's not proper, and you allowed me to go ahead and do it. Now, when questions are being asked, should he be left out? No. So I think if we change the system, create a system where responsibility is on them also. In that case, if you advise the political head not to do this, and he or she insists on doing it, then you resign to keep your sanity. Otherwise, to me, in other words, we have to find a way of strengthening the civil service. Or at least, if you not resign, let it be on paper. Yeah. Let it be on paper that this was what my minister requested. This was the advice I gave. Irrespective of my professional advice, he went ahead and did something else. So there is need for strengthening the civil service, making them be able to stand their ground. Thank you. To be autonomous, sort of. Thank you.
Dr. Akwete, how do we, because Professor Kwashiga has made a very interesting point, and from the reaction from our listeners, you can see that everybody wants to protect their job, right? So telling a civil servant that they should resign on principle, I think Ghana is one of the countries that have hardly seen people resign on principle about anything. How do we insulate our civil service then from political retribution where they are doing their work, the work that Professor Kwashiga is suggesting, where they can now be questioned why they allowed their political heads to take certain decisions? So how do we insulate our public service from this kind of retribution?
Thank you. In most of the developed countries, you could mention Germany, even the US, UK, and so on, the civil service has its own institutions. It has courts. They don't use the word court, maybe commission or something. And there are procedures. They are protected. They are the servants of the state. Okay? To be a civil servant is rigorous. It's a merit-based system. You write your exams, you have your own structures, those who are your leaders, who assess you, you fail, you're out. But they also have courts. And I'll tell you how I discovered that. Under Boris Johnson, recently, he had a Home Office minister. She was called Priti Patel. It's not her beauty that made her pretty, but it's her name. And she wanted, like our ministers do here, she wanted to bring in her own people, like special assistants, as they call them, or advisors. There was an attempt to then get some of them to replace what the civil servants do. Now, the civil servants and the minister, they belong to two different categories. Okay. So I think the story came out that she was trying to do this and some civil servants were being shifted and this new position was being created. They talked about it, they tried to explain, and the minister still wanted to go ahead with this. So the chief director, the equivalent of ours, permanent secretaries, as they will be called, then decided, after failing to persuade the minister, to file a writ with a civil service, I don't know if it's tribunal or they have a name for it. It's called tribunal. Yes. And then the prime minister said, oh, I support my minister. These special advisors who do work and so on. And then the permanent secretary resigned to pursue the case. But the case didn't end. Then the government said, oh, we'll settle out of court. Okay. And then that's how the case ended. So there are institutions protecting the civil service. And to remain there, you write exams. If you fail your exams, you go, you can write it again and you come back. But there are institutions protecting the civil service from the political class. The political class cannot make decisions anyhow to remove you. In Ghana, it's extremely weak. I mean, sometimes there's been tension between the chair of the Public Service Commission or the members of the public service and ministers who want to change people and they say, no, you can't change them. And then the competency is also something that they don't joke with. You write exams, you don't do well, you're out. And if you pass the exams, you will have to sit again to come in. Is that the system you have here? So we need to build systems, institutions, but the civil service is the service of the state. The ministers come in as political leaders, and they also have their framework. So nobody can push the other one out except through voting and so on. So we need to build all these institutions. The more we have delayed in looking for a more inclusive system, the parties are there, independent candidates are there, they are political leaders. But the business of the state government is done by civil servants who don't contest elections, but they pass elections on merit. So these systems are very clear. We don't have them. Whatever we have collapsed. You hear a lot about how Ghana's civil service was civil servants were in hot demand across Africa. You know, the training, the competence, the ability to, but now I'm not sure if it's still that. I mean, the person who would know is Professor Chwai, you know. So please ask him.
Prof, are civil service doing the work that they have been mandated to do? I think there's a whole Civil Service Act. I don't know whether it needs reforms for it to conform to what we are looking at in terms of amendments for the local government system. So since you know so much about it, if you can.
I must say that our civil service is still regarded as one of the best on the continent, in spite of our problems that we face, in spite of, politicization. It's still regarded as one of the best. I think the issue of meritocracy is very important. We need to pursue that to its logical conclusion. They still take examinations at the levels. But then the perception is that those who are recruited may not have, taken part in the examination at all. Maybe the examination was used as a front. But then, yes, still, people regard the civil service as very important, particularly the position of chief, the director, and the directors. They are very strong. They are technocrats. I still believe that our civil service still has one of the best technocrats around the world. It needs to, what we need to do as a country is maybe to fine-tune it, to make sure that things are done correctly. And the final thing is that the civil service is supposed, each ministry is supposed to have ministerial advisory boards. And these ministerial advisory boards, you have the composition from outside and inside the service. But it looks like as if the advisory boards are not doing their work well. If they are doing their work well, I believe that our civil service will be stronger than it is now.
Thank you very much. So I'm coming to the floor. I'm not going to let my panel members do all the talking. So I'm coming to the floor, and the discussion that we are having so far, I want to solicit from you your views concerning whether you think that we involving political parties in local government elections will make a difference to our current dysfunctional system. So I think I will first call Professor Kwesi Jonah, right? So that, and then please, if you have your hand up, if you can come to the front here so that you can.
I have to stand up there. Oh. No. Yes. Okay. So you still have to go.
I think he can face them without having to climb up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so as the distinguished moderator properly said, my name is Kwesi Jonah, VVOP, very, very ordinary personality. And to answer Madam Moderator's question, will the parties make any difference at all in our local government system? I have just one little point to make. If you look at party involvement in governance at the national level, what is very clear is the keen competition between the two major parties to make a difference. 24-hour economy, free SHS, and so on and so forth. If we were to allow the political parties into the districts, a similar competition to develop could occur at the district level. Each party wanting to ensure that whether it is Ahanta West District or Impoho Wasa East District, they leave the kind of developmental legacy that will make the people feel like keeping them there. At the moment, this kind of development competition is not taking place precisely because we are behaving like ostriches, burying our heads in the hot desert sand, pretending as if the parties are completely non-existent in the district. The other thing that I want to say, the current system has created some kind of administrative instability at the level of the district. And this is how it happens. Because the chief executive is appointed by the president, many chief executives just ask the president or somebody to remove the district coordinating director. So the district coordinating director has become a victim of the present system. They are the most frequently transferred officers at the district level. If Kwesi Jonah becomes chief executive, he doesn't like you, you are off. Because he was appointed by the president, he has so much power, but if we changed the system, this kind of administrative instability, which is currently hurting our local government system, will no longer be there. I am done, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel Ikpe. I'm a coordinating director at the local government service. And I'm happy you touched that. Now I'm relaxed. I have been a victim before, but I'm not perturbed. I'll march on. I want the two professors to just clear this within the constitution and the law. Now, under organization, when the president or the president appoints the MMDCs will have to be confirmed by the assembly. Now, when the president decides to fire the MMDCs, he does that without the recourse to the assembly. My question is, why is it that when the president nominates the MMDCs, they do not become MMDCs until they are confirmed? But when he's firing them, he does that at will, and then that ends it. How do we go around that? Because the assemblies do not seem to be performing. Because the MMDCs tend to lean towards the person who is, for want of a better, in quotes, who is putting bread and butter on their table. But when they realize that even if the president decides to fire you, and then the two-thirds of the assembly said, no, the president cannot fire you, then they will be tend to lean towards the development of the local authority. How do we go around that within the legal framework? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I
And Shine Tenu from TUC. I'm a bit confused about the whole issue. Because when it comes to funding and all those things, it has to come from the government. So how can we, or a political party that is ruling strictly out of the whole show, who will take government people properly before they can work. Because in Ghana or everywhere, before you can work, unless you get funding from some place, if you are, it doesn't come from the government, how can the system work? So it has to be mixed reaction. You can't take the government of the political party off completely. You can't depend on them to complete. So how do? We have to think about how we can balance things there. Thank you.
Good, very, very good question. Very good question.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Chief Director for the Annual New Year School. It's very critical for sustainable development. Political accountability is very crucial for sustainable development, and we must begin to look at development from the bottom-up approach if we are serious in sustaining development. So I'd want to agree with the notion that we need political parties to put forward candidates at the grassroots level with the best brain, with the best expertise, with the best network, with the best knowledge to lead local community development. Because like Professor Jonas said, we should not behave like the ostrich. Political parties are keenly involved in the election of assembly men and women. True or false? True or false? So why do we want to behave that we wouldn't want to complete the process of local governance so that the municipal chief executive is accountable to the people of the area? So he is able to mobilize critical human resource, critical intellectual resource, critical financial resource, and identify the critical needs of that constituency so they can accelerate development. So I submit respectfully that political parties should be allowed active space in the election of local leaders, from the unit committee to the assembly member to the municipal or district chief executive, so that they will be accountable to the people, so we can ensure a duality of a bottom-up, bottom approach to sustain development. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. Good afternoon. I would like to take it a little higher than what we are discussing here. I think, Madam Moderator, you've been hammering on something. Sorry, my name is Kingsley. I'm with NAT. Madam Moderator, you've been talking about the developed world and how they are doing well and others, but there's one thing I've realized that you are, I don't know whether you are refusing or intentionally you didn't want to say, which I want to help you. I realize that, yes, with the developed nation, you know that they are disciplined when it comes to their regulatory issues. They are disciplined. In Ghana here, we are talking about regulatory, we are talking about district, municipal, and all those areas, which we have a regulation governing those processes. Are the executives following those regulations? The law says that a fund collected, a portion should go into a fund, disperse it to these people to facilitate development. You are not doing it. You sit at Jubilee House. You don't disseminate the funds. How do you expect them to advance their development? These are critical issues that I believe we should talk about. From executive level, we should be disciplined. The law, the constitution, or the district assembly common fund regulation urges you to do that. Why are you refusing not to do that? And it is our responsibility as citizenry to mobilize. No, Mr. Doc Akote and all. We've been hearing them, but sometimes we need to be radical in these issues. As we speak, you will bear with me that the district assembly common fund is in arrears. Akufo-Addo is gone. It's in arrears for about a year or two, or whatever. How do we advance development? And we are failing to follow the rules and regulation, or be it the Constitution or the District Assembly Common Fund Act. And it's not right. And this is something I think this discussion should touch on boldly. We are not touching any political whatever, but we are touching on our own laws. We want it to be implemented so that we in the rural areas will get our development to be done for us. My second issue has to do with how to make these whatever. We talk about accountability, and we leave a very important area, which is the strengthening of the internal audit and the controls that we are supposed to put in place. We refuse to talk about that. You go to the district and the municipals. Where is the office of the internal auditor? It's under a tree. It's under a tree somewhere. But however, we want these people to assist in what? In strengthening internal controls. How do we leave these people out? Per the Financial Act, the Section 83, mandate these people to assist us. Why have we ignored them? And I believe that in a conversation like this, we shouldn't sit here without mentioning the strengthening of that particular unit and the division. I have a lot to say, but I will end here. Thank you so much for the opportunity given me.
So,
Thank you.
How many more so after her, then we will let the panel members answer the question, and then we will take 2 more, and then come to some other aspects on the floor and conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. I am Comfort Awotri, working with the ECG and a member of the Public Utility Workers Union under TUC. Please, if I understand the whole thing today, at this moment, I think we are here to solicit for ideas to implement and also see to the success of peace building, digital accountability, democratic governance, and citizen engagement, improving transparency, efficiency, and citizen participation. Here, I think looking at the people that we open up or expand it beyond political appointment, because there might be other people who are not political affiliates, who will also be having the expertise, who are honest, transparency, and accountable. We should consider these people as well. In consideration, I will suggest that we put measures in place that will help each and every one who is interested to take such position, and then bring their profiles out. We study the profile, and then we also give them opportunity to also participate, where a committee is set up to evaluate their profiles and then see who is capable, that the opportunity will be given to such people. Aside that, if you are lucky to take such position, you should be accountable, and then periodically we should also see that there are people who will engage the community as well, and then also be accountable periodically. This is my humble suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Prof.
So I'll be brief. Question number 1, the appointment of MMDC, the current appointment. So the president nominates, assembly by 2/3 majority present and voting would approve, and the president would appoint. And the argument is that why is it that when the president is removing, he does not involve the assembly? I mean, the problem is, these are some of the problems with the current system. If you look at the current, system, the quality of even the MMDCs is under question. It's questionable. He may be a party man, but he may not be as strong as he is. And even sometimes, the president knows that he has not got the one-third members. So he will remove the one-third in the morning and then allow the assembly to vote in the afternoon. By then, he will have appointed the members. That was why Act 940 was brought into being. So, there are problems. There is no. We also have problems between the presiding members and the MMDCs. There are problems about all it. So the current system has problems that we need to resolve. So I think that is why the advocacy that we should discuss, how can we make the current system more sustainable and more viable for us all? The question about money lies at the heart of everything. It lies at the heart of politics, everything. So the question you ask is very important, and it ties in with the argument that why is this that a statutory payment like disbursement of the common fund has been in arrears for years, and nothing has been done. And this is why we have not been as strong as we have been as a people. I don't know why the assemblies have not, the local government service with the assemblies and said that we have not been able to receive our disbursement. The assemblies have been, it's going on well. Because if you do that, the MMDCs may be removed, overnight or the following day, as the case may be. So I think it's a valid point that we need to raise. The issue about the fact that we should be more disciplined is a very important one. And I think as a country, we have not followed rules and regulations. If we have followed rules and regulations at the national level, from the leader to the bottom, I don't see any reason why we should be in this trouble. So yes, I agree with you that more discipline is needed, and more discipline is needed if we follow the rules and regulations. Financial accountability, very important. The internal audit committees are not working. If you look at the Act, the Local Governance Act 936, it talks about the internal audit committees. They are not working, and that is why you find the internal auditor under a tree hasn't got any place. But I know that the internal audit agency is trying to create the atmosphere for internal auditors, to work. So these are, my comments.
Okay. Since I addressed the question to the two, now about the removal of the DCs by the president without recourse to the assemblies. If you look at the constitutional provision, it says there shall be a district, that is 243(1). There shall be a district chief executive for every district who shall be appointed by the president with the prior approval of not less than 2/3 majority of members of. Now, you see, who is appointing actually? It's the president. The approval process is just one of the constitutional steps towards the appointment. So the appointer is the president, and so he can remove as the Constitution provides. The same way, the president appoints ministers with the prior approval of Parliament. If the president decides to remove you as minister, he doesn't have to go to Parliament. He removes you because he appointed you. It's only that Parliament approved you or the Assembly approved you, whichever case. There is a disconnect, admittedly, as you point out. But that is why there may be the need to amend the Constitution, to reform the Constitution, so that the DC knows that he or she can be removed by the assembly. Now, about the issue of discipline, when it comes to respect for the law, like the District Assembly's Common Fund, how do you expect the DCE put there by the president to challenge the president for failing to send monies? No, you can't do that. If he were elected, answerable to the people, he could do that. There was a case in Nigeria. You know, in Nigeria, there is a formula for sharing the revenue, oil revenue, between the federal government and the state governments. That is, if your state is one of those states within the oil zone, constitutionally, you have a right to a certain percentage. So there was a dispute as to what the percentage should be that will come to the states. And the states came together and sued the federal government, because they were able to do that because it was not the federal government that put them there as governors. No, they were elected into office by their people, different parties. So they had the guts to sue the federal government. Here you can't do it as an appointed, you can't do that. So there's a need for reform. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think I had put down that, you know, in answer to his question, even though he didn't address it to me, just a note I made was that, well, with respect to the removal of the MMDCs by the president, if we have partisan elections at the district level, like Prof. Kwashiga said, this cannot take place. You know, it's only the people then that can remove the MMDC. And so that simplifies everything. And the MMDC is now accountable to you and I, the ordinary citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, your question should be very quick because we are running out of time.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
No part 1 or part 2.
Oh.
So,
Okay, my name is Alasan Abubakar, presiding member at Swami, to be precise. Yes, we all know that...
please, I've seen more people joining. I said only the 2. Please, our time is gone, so we have to make room for the others.
Okay.
Yeah. So, 30 seconds each, quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. We all know that we've always been speaking about it, that the president always wields a lot of powers. And they always, at least the former president has made an important steps in reducing those powers. My question is, please, my first question will go to Prof. Prof.
Just one question. The way you are saying first question.
The approval of presiding members is one of the most...
we are out of time.
Yes, that's what I'm asking. Yeah. So the approval of presiding members is one of the most difficult things to do. Prof, can't we do something about it to make it a simple majority? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Like my co-person said, my name is Mumin Nuruddin. You keep on mentioning about advanced countries. Sometimes when you mention or compare Ghana to some of these countries, it baffles my mind.
To be fair, I mentioned Kenya.
Yes, you mentioned Kenya.
I mentioned South Africa.
But mostly you are mentioning Germany, US, and these are people who are advanced and their systems are working. I like what Professor Akwete said. Their systems are working. So are our systems working? That is my first question. Secondly, to Professor, because he made mention of Nigeria, which is a neighboring country. Prof, what has taken Nigeria to that level? Because their local elections are always more participatory and active than the general elections. What takes Nigeria there? If you can go deliberate further for us. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Charles Ayunab. Moderator, knowledge becomes knowledge if it is translated into action by committed and inspired people. Is that not true? Good. Number 2, experience is the best teacher
if experience is the best teacher, then we won't have old fools. Is that one not also true? If experience is the best teacher, then we will not have old fools. But experience becomes the best teacher if it is reflected in the light of truth for sustainable development. Is that not also true? All this knowledge that our professors have come to present to us, at the end, where does it go? Who is supposed to present this knowledge, this innovation for transformation to the authorities concerned? Every year we come here, we do deliberations, then they tell us, oh, we've had good education. But at the end, where does it go? So we are describing an act the size of an elephant to a blind man. The act is wasted. The act is wasted. So describe the action to the people who are relevant and let them translate it into action so that we can benefit. You heard what the auditor has said. Why is it that we cannot face the truth? It is the truth that will help us to develop. We must be consistent with the process and we must be consistent with the destination. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I will give the final word to the lady behind you. Yes. 30 seconds, please.
Thank you so much. I'm happy this conversation has come up. And until we start talking about it, we will not be able to implement it. I believe this system that we are talking about will help very well in decentralization. My people are the civil servants, coordinators and them, please, can't you be unionized? Are you not supposed to be a part of the union? You belong to the union. So where lies the intimidation? Please, let's work together as union. And we can't be intimidated by the politician again because we need development in our rural systems. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this has been a very interesting deliberation. I will give the final word to some of our experts here. So I'll call Professor Asa Sumila Mohammed, right? So he can sum up quickly, probably answer one or two of the questions that were raised, and then I will go to Dr. Harrison Belly. Then I'll end with Madam Kathleen Ade. Thank you. Very quickly.
Okay. Thanks so much. And then good afternoon. I think very interesting conversation. The unionists here, we need that. The whole local government system, the same way for all, the civil service and maybe public service, the fact of the matter is that the laws are adequate, as Professor will agree with me, but the implementation. So the election definitely is to come to help us enforce the laws. Yes, we agree that the appointment has made it not quite easy to implement. So the election that we are proposing, I think, is very, very important. At least the examples from Nigeria and other places are showing very clearly that at least you are elected, you went round, you were able to promise the people. Unfortunately, maybe in the early days of appointment, it was better. But now that it has become like an agenda of rewarding political parties, activists, now people are appointed without even knowing the role they are going to play in the assemblies. In fact, I've worked with more than 150 assemblies, and sometimes you go to the DCEs and they don't even know the agenda. When you ask them, what is your whole medium-term plan talking about? He cannot tell you. Meanwhile, the medium-term plan, that translates into an annual action plan, now with the budget, are supposed to be approved by the coordinating director, by the presiding member, presiding over a general assembly. Most of the general assemblies are not even working, Prof. The general assemblies are not working because there's no presiding member. There was this argument about the fact that, okay, if there's no presiding member, a member presiding, which constitutionally, I agree, maybe Prof can, but I think there was a Supreme Court judgment on that a member presiding doesn't exist. But the first 4 years, we had some assemblies, I cannot give the percentage, but a good number of assemblies do not even have presiding members. That means that, as I'm told constitutionally, the assemblies were operating illegal. In fact, there's an assessment that is done every year called the DPAT. That DPAT assesses the functionality of the assembly. Now, the key, what we call the core indicators or the minimum conditions, says that if you do not have up to 3 mandatory General Assembly meetings, then the Assembly did not function. Many assemblies never even sat because they didn't have a presiding member. How did they approve their budget? How did they approve their action plan? And we said if their budget and the plans are not approved, it means that all expenditures are illegal. So if you want to probably take it to court now, I know a number of assemblies will really be hot. DCs will be hot because they have spent money that there was no approval. So generally, and it is also showing very extensively that we, the citizens, have to be aware. And I think the election will help because at the time of electing the MMDAs, they will come and make the campaign. They will come and tell us how they are going to implement the medium-term plans. Because during the medium-term plan process, which will start this year, every community participates to do the action plans. And also, so the communities are aware of what they are expected each assembly to do. Unfortunate thing is that after they have done the medium-term plan, the communities do not have any opportunity to get back to the assembly. Sometimes through the assembly member, unfortunately, some of the assembly members are not even aware. So it is important that we do the election so that when you are coming to present yourself for election, at least for nothing at all, you have known some of the basics of this assembly, the whole operations of the assembly. At least you have known the act. You have known the role of the DCE. You have known the role of the presiding member. You have known the role of each of the 5 statutory committees. So at least you come prepared, even with no education. If you are not even educated, at least even up to secondary school, you will be able to understand this. Up to university, as some people are saying, we should cut a particular the level of education. Is important, but because people are giving it on silver platter, they are taking it for granted. So I'm just calling on the fact that we need to promote and push this agenda of election, and let's see how that one will go. 32 years of appointment. Let's try election and see we have the basis to compare. And
Thank
that's
you
my
very
stand.
much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Doc, very briefly, 1 minute.
Thank you very much. With the election of the MMDCEs, it will relieve the government of the burden of announcing for applicants making submission, shortlisted, going through the process of confirmation at the assemblies. Some are rejected, they are renominated. That is where the monetization comes in. Assembly members have to be paid before they confirm members. So we go for election, you present yourself, and that will give opportunity to independent people, like technocrats, also to present themselves, to be elected. For example, with the current government, they've set out information for people who are interested to become the MMDCs to apply. It's overwhelming. I'm from the Volta region, I teach there. Volta region alone, 18 positions, 279 people applied. Look at the energy that we need to put in place to vet these people and get them elected. Tied to it is the quality of MMDCs. Some of them, they are apologists. They are with you in the communities. As Prof said, some don't even understand the concept of decentralization, yet they are in the seat to provide leadership. Is that the kind of leadership that we want? It's left to us. Election is the best way to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I think this has been a very good deliberation. I want to come back to my friend that said that where is this whole talk shop going? Last year when we met here and we started this conversation on local assembly reforms, it ended up with the political parties putting it in their manifestos. So these kind of conversations are very important. They do achieve something. And we know that right now, with we talking about it, even though within the NDC manifesto, who are now the ones in government, even though they are advocating for a non-political party participation, from what we are hearing, people tend to support that if we have the political parties involved, then we would see a much more participatory local government system. And we have talked about having the institutions that will support the system. So I think that based on this, we take these kind of information for it. Let's not end the conversation here. Because when we talk about government, it involves all of us. It's our voices that they are supposed to listen to. So we carry your voices to the powers that be, and then we try to make changes to the system for the betterment of our democracy. So help me thank our able panelists for doing this amazing job. And thank you all so much for the contribution you have done. And see you again soon. Keep the conversation going. Thank you very much.
So a very big thank you to our team, a very dynamic team from IDEG. God bless you for being here with us. We hope you'll be here next year as well. Thank you so much. They want to take a picture with who? With the Queen Mother. Okay, so then you would have to go down. So please, we'll be breaking for lunch. We'll come back at 2:45. 2:45 to begin the next session. So we have less than 1 hour. 2:45. Thank you.
Nananum and our profs and experts, Professor Kwapon, Dr. Doche, could you please join the panelists for a photo session? Yes, we could take them here. Dr. Manyo, you can join them. Yes. Yes, please, let's line up for the photo session. Okay, I think that we should stand here. Journalists, please allow them to take the photos. Yes, please, let's line up in front of, yes.